If I could just ask one more question on sort of on Google, friend or foe? Is it a distribution channel, or is it stealing your core usage? If I can ask that to James first of all.
Yeah, and I will answer the question, but actually I think it was interesting. There was a kind of a groan or a murmur in the room when you said that. And if you did a word cloud of today, I think probably local and social and Google would be the three big words that would stand out. So actually I think for my benefit, if no one else's, if everyone in the room could kind of, if you first raise your hands, if you see Google as someone that's kind of helping what you do, and then kind of, and you might find yourself raising your hand twice, but for those people that think that Google is kind of adversely affecting what you do. So yeah, mostly on the kind of the positive side, I think. I think it's really interesting. I think as a broadcaster, the BBC has spent most of its life, as all broadcasters, completely in charge of our distribution network or distribution model. Okay, we don't necessarily own every kind of piece of metal that is a transmitter, but we certainly kind of have a pretty controlled kind of line of sight from kind of producing a piece of content to getting it out there in front of the audience. Now, obviously, on the web, that's not certainly not the case, and with services such as Google, which is obviously very dominant in kind of the search market in the UK. We are kind of, there is certainly that kind of, quite different relationship. I think, I don't know, I think they, that's, I guess, partly on the negative side, because there's a bit less control than maybe we're used to as a broadcaster. On the positive side, obviously, for us and anyone out there that's generating content on the web, it's the biggest opportunity to get people to your content, is to kind of, harness the power of Google and make sure your content's found in the best way. I think probably, clearly it's a big benefit to us, so I would have certainly raised my hand kind of on that point. I think probably our task as the BBC is to kind of run our website and produce our content in such a way that, someone mentioned Google News earlier, which obviously, is a service now that you can kind of, find the latest news from all kinds of providers on Google. And actually, if you're just wanting the headlines and a snapshot of the story, that's probably enough for a lot of people, and you won't necessarily then travel through to the destination site. And I guess the challenge is on us as the BBC and for other providers that in a similar position to make our proposition, within our own area on the BBC, something that is still worth going to by whatever means, whether that's the content itself or kind of what we offer around that in a public service kind of model. So no, I think I think it's a very interesting question, but I think it's we've got to use it and harness the power of it and take on the challenge, really.
The way that I always say it is, Google's a tactic, it's a tactic. It's not your strategy.
Yeah.
You have to think of it as such and understand how to use it. But if it is your strategy, then you're not going to be around in 10 years' time.
I don't think you can be a website that's or any kind of content provider on the web and pretend that and just kind of not pretend that Google sits in the corner somewhere, because it doesn't. It's the prime means that most people get to our content, certainly in this country.
I suppose the difficulty is when Google becomes a content creator, in the sense that it's displaying its own local business results. And that's a complete cannibalization of the IYPs that we have out there, perhaps. So.
Well, I mean, friend or foe, I think it's both. I mean, it's the term co-opetition comes to mind here. They're a friend, actually, because they're giving some good employees. You might have read in the paper a couple of weeks ago, the chief operating officer of Google left to become our chief operating officer. So fantastic. Google, give us train up lots of employees and hand them over. But in all seriousness, two sides of the equation. The usage equation, clearly for traffic, where do people go to get local business information? They're taking a lot of traffic there through their blending of Universal Search and Google Maps. So one side, they're a competitor. The other side is Google, as we know, their DNA is about scalable technology. Their DNA is not about setting up a sales force to reach the small business. It's a messy business. So for us in the directory space, many of us are actually reselling effectively Google clicks and adding value to those clicks by packaging it up into certain turnkey campaigns. We're adding a lot of value in terms of explaining the value of those clicks. So one of the biggest problems Google has on clicks for the small business when they sell it through self-service, the churn rates are absolutely huge, because maybe an e-commerce site owner can understand the value of the click, but a plumber does the plumber really understand the value of a click? In most cases, they don't. You know, what the plumber understands is calls. So it's very important. What Google sees in us is that relationship where we can actually service the small business and demonstrate value to the small business. So, friend and foe.
I would agree to what Simon just mentioned. First of all, from a distribution side, yes, of course, it's necessary to distribute your local business content and allow local search stuff, everything. On the monetization side, at least we'll try with this own network and with this own technology to become a coexisting partner within the advertisement space on a local area. We do not want to compete with Google on a national area. I don't think anybody can compete with them. However, in the local area, we just want to be an alternative. At least we should try.
So just to wrap up then, if no, we're really short on time, we've overrun massively. So if we can ask everyone for their 2010 predictions, maybe specifically for each of your areas in terms of social, maybe in under 140 characters would help. So if we could start maybe other end, Roland.
I guess my prediction for 2010 would be it is the seminal year in the growth of SME digital, because I think there are starting to be a whole range of products out there, both online and via mobile, that will allow advertisers to get access to customers and get access to the leads in the way in which they want to. And so I think that now that that supply is there, actually you'll see demand follow really rapidly. And I think that you will start to see that 7% number I mentioned in my prayers significantly increase to, over the next 3 years, I would predict sort of 15% of all SME spend will be online.
That's a difficult question. I'll defer to my colleague and then come back in a second. I'm still cogitating on that one.
So 140 characters. I think social will become one of the distribution channels that directory publishers, in our case, can use in order to generate leads for our SMB clients. If they are the most effective one, or if they are the most largest one in terms of reach, we will know in 1 year.
I'm not sure if it's a prediction or an outside bet, but I think we've talked a lot today about local, how local should we be, how local do you have to be effective. I don't know, I've got a bit of a hunch that maybe the answer to that is actually around people, and it's not just a corny kind of plug into the local social thing, but I think places and locations, you know, people refer to locations and places, but actually when you talk to them and get a sense of what they mean by why they identify with that place, it's the people in the place and the community that was in that place. And I just think that actually what we might see is actually that prominent people in the area, you know, running websites, blogging, Twittering, whatever, actually the ones that kind of people kind of gather around to kind of get a sense of a local website. And actually maybe it's not about geographical places, it's about kind of people that represent those places and give it a sense of place.
Yeah, sorry to pass on there, but I think next year is not about revolution per se, it's probably evolution in terms of mobile is going to be huge, social is going to be huge, advertisers are going to demand much more visibility into the ROI of their leads, and hopefully Skype would be huge.
Thank you very much panel.